Top of it, man. It's 6 a.m. May 24th, 2025. Um, Hope everybody doing good. Hope everybody feeling good, and hope this message finds you well. Just checking in, and we just starting off our day right, in the right vibration, in the right mood. But it's crazy, um, how much you can improve your life, uh, in reference to your belief, to the change in your belief, and especially like when you have failed, like significantly in your life, that's where you know that you're destined for something great because after failing a certain amount of times and becoming callous, you know, to the process of, being embarrassed or feeling discouraged, in regards to others, after a while, um, it becomes like, you know, more so obsessive about your purpose and about what it is that you need to learn, from the process of, journeying towards something that you aspire to do. And it's complex, but at the same time, it's rather simple. And the greatest sophistication is simplicity, so becoming, or rather simplifying our routine or our plan of action or the process of what needs to happen, and actually, you know, taking the action, to move forward with, like whether it be in thought, word, or deed. But you always have support everywhere you go. And then sometimes even like people who may seemingly oppose you are supporters, um, and they just don't know how to acknowledge or how to go about it. But don't discredit or undermine anything that you've built in your life. Don't not value it, um, due to it seeming dreadful. And there's a scripture that says, while you're being disciplined, it seems painful and that you're getting nothing from it. But um, you won't know the value that it brings until you see the value that's displayed, from being trained by it. And I think that's to say, like, sometimes we got people like we But yeah, man, like, don't be so quick to not value yourself, to discredit, you know, what you're working on. And the reason it's important for you to encourage yourself and to stay enthusiastic is because people will steal your energy, people will steal your joy, and they'll do it rather quickly if you let them. And a lot of times, I would say the people who are pure at heart, pure of mind, pure in intent, those are the people that are attacked. Those are the people who are being attacked unreasonably or like unwarranted. And those are the people, like, where it's like if people could snatch your innocence or you know condemn you, though even though you're blameless, and as long as they have gullible people who will buy what they're selling, people would try it and they'll say things just to say it, and really just to agitate you and to almost discourage you. But even in regard to that, there's a higher level to where you can't be touched or you can't be bothered. So there's a brief audio that it's rather quick, but it's easy to find, and it's it's about not responding to things that obviously make you mad, and it's just talking about different scenarios and then why reacting emotionally to everything, be it becoming upset or becoming angry about everything, is such a liability in regard to yourself. And it's very true, but especially like in regard to this higher living and this higher manifestation process. If you're gonna manifest a lot of the things you're setting out to do, you're gonna have to walk away from a lot of things that you're used to acknowledging or addressing or confronting. But honestly, it's a lot much more worth it than one would anticipate. Because you can't change small people's thinking. And not to say these people are small, looking at them with haughty eyes, not at all. Because everybody is a god within their own right, but some people choose to use their godliness to their detriment rather than use it to others' benefit and their benefit. And the best way to do that or to mediate that would be through some worthwhile or worthy service. And a lot of the people, say people who are chosen or especially chosen by God, um, have trouble with usually aren't necessarily good people, or people like a people person. They may have people they have rapport with, but it's usually a transactional kind of dynamic there, and it it can seem tough sometimes. Say if you're sincere and you're a helpful individual, because you may get discouraged and think that you're wandering in a foreign land. And I would say, on the one hand, yes, you are wandering in a foreign land, but also I would remind you to remind yourself of Hebrews and what the prefixes that it gave you in regard to, you know, the great figures of the past and the people that we acknowledge and commended for their wealth or for their faith rather. And how it said that, none of the people received what it were what it was that they were promised. They only welcomed it from afar. And it says, because they saw and they believed on him who they could not see, God was not ashamed to be called their God. And when you're walking away from things, that clearly bother you, clearly disrupt you, clearly may bring up some older, uh, feelings and I would say negative reactions within you, um, and you start looking, and believing on what you cannot see positively, then God for sure is going to bless you. But also too, um, even the act of faith comes from the Most High, and because He is within us, that's where we get that courage to muster up, the faith, and it's just important, that you always remind yourself that you right where you want to be. Of course, there's a lot that we can improve on. We could be a lot better all the time, but you're right where you want to be. You're in your sweet spot because even though your goals aren't all necessarily accomplished because you aim so high, you can look at where you are today, and for sure you aren't where you were 2 months ago, or yesterday or last week. So I think everything is beautiful, and it's a certain duality to things, that we may not fathom or understand. But also, um, the sweetest deal and the most profitable deal for you is to do, what God commands us to do. And that's to live right, treat each other accordingly, and work for what we get and enjoy what we get. You know, It doesn't say anything about being covetous, uh, envying others. It doesn't say anything about being jealous. It doesn't say anything about being nasty. It doesn't say anything about starting fights among your peers or your brothers in any regard. And I think it's about time we stop acting like it does on real time. But again, like I said, I didn't come, to give uh, a whole 4 hour speech, but just wanted to give some insight, some game, early morning. Good. Nice. Swing. But yeah, I just wanted to check on you guys, make sure everything was good. Um, the video resonates. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Um, and yeah, man. Finna go home soon. Is that open your eyes, you sluggers, and you'll have bread to spare. And it says the shiftless go hungry. And what is that saying? Uh, what's the parable of those two scriptures? And really, I believe it's saying, one, your work shouldn't be dreadful to the point where you're choosing the cousin of death over it. And of course, our body needs rest and we need sleep and everything, but we shouldn't necessarily have to uh, sleep 80% of the day away just to get fuel for you know a very very small portion of our day, right? And I think it's really speaking to, like, your work shouldn't be dreadful. It should be something you enjoy. It should be something you like to do, you want to do, and for good reason, like. But if you're dreading what you do, if you're unhappy, if you don't feel good about what you do, then that's gonna play out in your experience. But if you love what you do, if you're obsessed about what you do to the point where, you know, there may be times you lose sleep, you know, or you may work at you may have to work a little more than anticipated, but yeah, you love what you do so much that it's not an issue. Like, that's a blessing, you know, and especially in my experience, I'm so grateful, man, because um the entirety of my childhood, my teenage years, early adulthood years, a lot of times humans, we're always searching outward, and the whole time there's a still small voice always telling us what we know we ought to do. And sometimes we just have to put ourselves in a position to, identify the voice. But, you know, also God formed us in the womb, and he gave us a plan of expected end. You know, not to he didn't bring us this far, to discourage us, to leave us. Of course, everything that comes to us is from God, because the earth is his footstool and heaven is his abode. But at the same time, um, God will never leave nor forsake you. And when you're making it your duty to carry out his business, he's gonna make it his duty to make sure people know that you're his. And that's something not everyone has to believe, on surface level. But I stand, here a truthful witness, and I could bring up a lot of stories, to where God was directly involved, and it'll probably be tough for a lot of people, on a YouTube family, to believe me and everything like that. But at the same time, it shouldn't be, because when you think about the power and the magnitude and the majesty of God, nothing is impossible or nothing is too hard for God. And I think in regard to personal or individual standards or goals, you have to remind yourself of that. Nothing is too hard for God, but he'll take the people who humble themselves, and he'll exalt them. So we always know the right thing to do, or the right answer rather, um, regards to what we tell ourselves. And sometimes we let fear or confusion and things like that factor in for entertainment. But really, um, the world is in a a place to where the wicked is being uprooted, um and there's a lot of exacting going on. So I just wouldn't be in a place to drift or want to deviate, from what I'm working on or what I have been working on, it what's worked for me. Not saying be complacent, not saying not change it up or anything like that, but I'm saying in regard to character and integrity, this isn't the time or the place to be trying to meet and greet new people all the time. um Especially like now, like if you're a man and you over 18 and everything, like if you don't got already a select group of associates or friends that you already like locked in with, man, I would say if your colleagues aren't networked via career, then I would really just stay away from it, because at this point, you playing with your livelihood, you playing with your safety, and also not every man's temperament is the same in regard to females. So I'll say that, and I'll end the video with this. Like I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of beautiful and valuable females in my life, and I'll say like I'm not the most physically imposing dude. I'm not the I never won best dressed. I dress really well. I never won best dressed, and also, you know, I I don't, you know, identify with materialism, and I don't wear my wealth and what I work for in my attire. Not at all. But I am clean, I am casual, and I do respect myself. And I've been fortunate enough to, you know, be able to lead myself into many different areas and make a significant amount of money, but more importantly, make an impact and create value for others. And in doing that, creating a solid foundation reputation for myself and a nice launching pad, or I would say stepping stool, or like stairs but I would say, or rather, stepping stone, to build on. And I might seem like I'm just like rambling on and just like talking like without like any input. It's for a purpose, and the reason I'm so animated and you know emphasizing the point this morning is because I know there's a lot of people who sincerely don't enjoy what they do, and there's a lot of people who are unhappy and who feel like they waste time and that they wasted significant years in their life in their lives and valuable and very noteworthy energy, and that may be true, but also it's not too late. You know, if you are wanting to change your life or turn your life in the opposite direction, and the best thing that you could do for yourself is to start small. And when you start small, don't stop there. Just keep going, just keep building on it. But it's amazing, um, because you can really boss your life up by yourself. And I only know it from experience because I've taken myself through the change, and it's bittersweet sometimes for me, especially because you know my mother didn't get to see me live out um, my prosperity. How I I would say we both were alike. Me and my mother, we had the same birthday, but that's neither here nor there. But that's something that always keeps me, like not too high, not too low, but always like extremely grateful because you know I think we all like pity ourselves sometimes. Sometimes necessarily, sometimes inadvertently or unwarranted. But like we've all been through our you know amount of suffering. I would say my biggest suffering is really being in that house of bondage, and not knowing what it is that was like wrong with me, and really wasting precious valuable time. Like when a lot of things like have always like been in front of me, but it's just a matter of application, and also too, you won't do a thing if you don't necessarily know how. So again, it's bittersweet, because I'm very grateful. I really get to live, a pretty nice and awesome, amazing life. Um, I also have a son, and I'm grateful, extremely grateful for him, and his mother. And I, I love everyone, who loves me, especially. But like prior to you know having to detach myself, from that crowd, that place, that energy. Um, I let myself down, a lot, and I would say this past year, I really replenished myself, and I inspired and motivated myself, like never before, and I'm just excited. I'm wired, and I'm very enthusiastic about moving forward and really just helping others because that's really what it's about. Helping others, and also too, when you helping another, you helping yourself because we aren't separate. And life is beautiful. I wish more people, especially more men, were in a place to where they're not taking everything offensively because we'll have a lot more people here. Especially a lot more men here. Not killed from violence or unnecessarily, but that's the result of a lot of people being in pain, suffering, and not necessarily knowing how to articulate or express what it is they're feeling. And that's also the result of, condoning, people just trauma bonding regularly. But At the end of the day, you know, God is great. And like I said, um, find your sweet spot, whatever that is, find your niche and stay there. And also remember, like especially once you find your footing and you know what it is that you're good at, and you know the results are showing. Anybody who's prioritizing getting you out of that zone, out of that mode, out of that energy, I think it's time to really reanalyze, check yourself, and check them in regard to what's best and what's the most effective route and solution for you moving forward. And again, I don't want to be too long. Hope this message finds you well. Uh, I hope you blessed. And most importantly, I hope you happy. God bless.